The very first NFL draft took place in 1936, and it held 9 rounds. That number would grow to 20 rounds 3 years later. Then over the course of the next 5 decades, that number varied all the way up to 30 rounds, and eventually it worked its way down to 7 in 1994, and it's stayed at that number ever since. Now, despite being drafted, only 58% of 7th round picks even make the final roster, and less than a third of them altogether make it to year 3. And this doesn't even include getting actual playing time, let alone being good. In fact, according to BattleRedBlog.com, over a 7-year period, there was less than a 1% chance that a 7th round pick went on to make at least one Pro Bowl during their career. Now, back in the day, due to the limitations in scouting, it was much more common to find a diamond in the rough, like Bart Starr and Roger Staubach. But in the modern era, it's been much tougher, and quarterbacks are some of the rarest finds. Scott Kaczmar from Football Outsiders put together this excellent breakdown on all quarterbacks drafted from 1994 through 2016, and when you look at the 7th rounders by themselves, almost every single one did nothing. I even added the last 5 drafts as well, and ultimately, there's only been 2 7th round quarterbacks in the modern era to even make a Pro Bowl. That was Matt Castle and Gus Frerotte, both of whom, despite an excellent season, were mediocre starters to backups for most of their careers. But despite not making a Pro Bowl, Ryan Fitzpatrick has to be the most successful modern 7th round quarterback, considering his longevity and his better career numbers compared to the previous 2. But even then, there hasn't been a single playoff win by a 7th round quarterback in that time span. Now, even though what I just said is technically true, I do feel that it's necessary to mention this guy.
3rd and goal. Johnson pulls it down. Johnson trying to get in there. Johnson for the end zone. Touchdown!
Brad Johnson was drafted in the final round of 1992. The dude barely saw the field in his first 3 seasons in Minnesota, but eventually, he became a decent starter and worked his way up to becoming a 2-time Pro Bowler and even held the starting job the year the Buccaneers won the Super Bowl. With 15 NFL seasons and managing to become a winning starting quarterback in the Super Bowl, Brad Johnson is the most successful last-round pick in the last 30 years. Now, before we continue, this video is sponsored by SeatGeek. Even though football season's over, there's still plenty of events, whether it's basketball, baseball, concerts, whatever it is. SeatGeek takes tickets from all across the web and puts them into one area, making buying simple. They place these tickets on a scale from 1 to 10, so you know when you're getting a good deal. Plus, first-time buyers can use promo code KTO at checkout for $20 off their first purchase. Shout out to SeatGeek for the sponsor. Now, let's dive into the video.
To the 20 and out in front, and only one man to beat, and easily can't run him down. He had the angle, but there goes
Bo Jackson is arguably the greatest athlete of all time, and he's also a 7th round pick from 1987. Although this sort of has an asterisk by it because it's not the same as the other players. Jackson was actually drafted 1st overall in 1986, but declined at the time to go play pro baseball. He did decide to pursue the NFL a year later, but it was on a limited basis due to prioritizing baseball. He only ended up playing 4 years and never for a full season, but he did put up an absurd 6.8 yards per carry as a rookie, and he was a Pro Bowler in 1990 before getting hurt and never playing in the NFL again. As for the most notable 7th round running back not named Bo Jackson, that was Jamal Anderson, who the Falcons selected in 1994. Anderson was a backup at first, like many of these 7th rounders, but he worked his way up to the starting role and put up 4 1,000-yard seasons in 5 years, including an incredible 1,846 yards in 1998. This was the year in which the Falcons managed to reach the Super Bowl, mostly on the back of Anderson. Now, to the opposite of running backs, 2 of the least talked about positions in football are kickers and punters. Often, many of these guys who play in the league today are undrafted. But for the sake of this video, the most notable 7th round kicker has to be Gary Anderson. He went on to play 23 seasons and is a member of 2 separate all-decade teams. Then as for the punter, Pat McAfee was a 7th round pick in 2009, and he managed to make the all-rookie team that year, as well as reaching 2 Pro Bowls in his career. When it comes to filling out the defensive 7th round picks, Brett Kiesel and Michael McCrary were great defensive ends. At defensive tackle, Jay Ratliff managed to make 4 Pro Bowls in a row for the Cowboys. At free safety, Brock Marion was a 3-time Pro Bowler and had 31 career interceptions and 4 years with at least 5 interceptions. And then at corner, Cortland Finnegan was an all-pro corner who had a solid 10-year career and was arguably the best corner in the NFL in 2008. You most likely remember him for this moment. Now, to go back to the offensive side, on the offensive line, 2 notable names were Adam Timmerman, who was a 2-time Super Bowl champion and 1-time Pro Bowler, and Tom Nalen, who is one of the best centers of all time, and he managed to reach 5 Pro Bowls and is also a 2-time Super Bowl winner. Now, as far as receivers go, there's been some good ones.
And he's got an open Edelman. Look at Edelman break 2 tackles, and Edelman is home for the touchdown.
Interestingly enough, Julian Edelman was actually a quarterback in college, but his skill set didn't necessarily translate to the pros in that way. The New England Patriots saw his athleticism on display at Kent State, and they decided to try an experiment by drafting him in the 7th round and moving him to receiver in the NFL. He mostly served as a backup throughout his first 4 seasons, but things really changed by year 5, and he became one of Tom Brady's go-to targets. There's only 3 other 7th round receivers who put up better career numbers than Edelman. That was Marquez Colston, TJ Houshmandzadeh, and Donald Driver. Colston right away became the go-to guy for Drew Brees in New Orleans, putting up over 1,000 yards in 6 of his first 7 seasons, and helped the team win a Super Bowl in 2009. Houshmandzadeh lined up opposite of Chad Johnson in Cincinnati, and they made a prolific duo for years. As for Donald Driver, he's the most successful of all these guys when it comes to personal accolades. As Green Bay's top pass catcher of the 2000s, Driver went on to become a 3-time Pro Bowler and amassed over 10,000 career receiving yards during his 14-year career. Both him and Colston statistically are pretty close, but in all honesty, you probably can't find another 7th round pick better than this next guy.
It is complete. Shannon Sharp with the ball down the sideline. Sharp gonna go for the touchdown.
Kids today know Shannon Sharp as the funny dude on Undisputed.
Keep going, JR, keep going.
But back in the day, this dude was a straight up baller. After playing college football at a very small Division II school, Sharp was considered too large to be a receiver, but too small to be a tight end. So he ended up starting his career out in Denver as a receiver and had very little production. But by year 3, the team officially moved him to tight end, and this is when he began to flourish. Eventually, Shannon Sharp became a critical part to the Broncos' Super Bowl success. He appeared on a Wheaties box. And eventually he went to Baltimore and had success there as well. By the end of his career, he was a 4-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time Super Bowl champion, the first tight end in NFL history to have over 10,000 career receiving yards, and ultimately a Hall of Famer. Not bad for a 7th round pick out of Savannah State.